Hello, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to wait for a few people to get in here before we get started. Let me make sure my computer is plugged in. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for joining us. Today we are here, so we all survived the weekend. What a weekend it was. And we're just at March, and so many things already happened in the world. So I'm happy that you all are here, alive and well, and able to join us. Today we're going to have a great discussion. We're going to be talking to Robert Snyder, which I'm going to bring on in a minute. But before I do that, I want to find out a little bit more about the people who are joining us. If you're new here for the first time, I want to introduce you to what this is. This is our global BA stand-up. So on the first Monday of every month, we meet and we have this live, both on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And we talk about the business analyst role. We talk about the career. We talk about where our career is going. We have special guests that come on and they share with us their individual perspectives about how they see the role and where it's going. We've had wonderful guests in the past. Last month, we had Laura Brandenburg. If you guys know her, she's an author in the BA space. And so we talk about stuff that affect our career. And we want you to be involved in our Global BA stand-up every month. So if this is your first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. It's very interactive. We always like to have, discussions with you. So feel free to use the chat. The chat is open. We're going to take questions probably at the end. So we'd love if you stay to the end. But in the meantime, while waiting for everybody to come in, if you want to put in the chat where you're joining from, that would be very, very helpful for us to know how global we are. So put in the chat where you guys are joining from. Joining from the UK. Welcome, Leticia. Thank you so much for joining us. Queen Amak, thank you. She says hello. Thank you for joining us well. Just to let you know that I do have a cold weather, so I'm not my usual self. I got the flu over the weekend, and I've been trying to get rid of it, but no such luck. I've been taking pills and at-home remedies like ginger and lemongrass and so on, but still trying to keep it going. So I'm going to have a good show for you, but just a reminder that I do have a little bit of a cold, so it's a little bit rough. We have Boma from Chicago. Welcome, Chicago. Queen Max says she's from Illinois. Welcome, Illinois, Chicago, and UK. Calgary, Canada. Awesome. I'm coming to Canada soon. I know I've been going to Montreal all the time, and I haven't been to Calgary or Winnipeg or Vancouver, but I'm coming to another part of Canada. I'm not decided yet, but I'm hoping to be there shortly. I love Canada. It's awesome. We also have somebody from the UK. Welcome from the UK. Ucho says, welcome. Welcome, Ucho. You're from the UK too. Ucho always joins us whenever we have live events. Good. Welcome, everybody. I'm happy that you're here. Join us and leave a comment in there from where you're joining from. We're happy to hear that. So I'm going to read for you a little background of our guest today. Today, we have a very, very special guest. And the topic we're talking about today is the hidden debt your interviewer is trying to pay and how you can use it to get hired. Like, what is it that interviewers want to know these days in order for them to hire you? So our special guest will talk about why are they really looking to hire a new BA, right? A company hiring a business analyst has a debt of some kind that they want to help you pay, more than merely tech debt. They're behind on something better. Your job in or before the interview is to convince them you help them pay back their debt. So we're going to get into more details about that, because obviously I'm not the authority on that. So I'm going to just give you a little teaser. Robert Snyder give you more details. So Robert Snyder is a founder and president of Innovation Elegance LLC. His 30-year career spans roles such as developer, project manager, change management, sales enablement, and the performing arts as well. So business and arts, right? His career path includes corporate roles, consulting roles, startups, PMP, agile certifications as well. He has performed in numerous vocal, dance, and theater ensembles. Robert helps companies untether from the software-centric agile hybrid stalemate to adopt elegance, a methodology that is natively people-centric. Elegance converts your communication traffic jam into a communication symphony. Elegance converts your frustration factory into an elegance expectation factory. So Robert earned his BS, Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the University of Illinois and his MBA in Strategy from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Robert is publishing a series of books right now on innovation technology, including Innovation Elegance, Transcending Agile with Ruthlessness and Grace, which is available now on Amazon, and Innovation Portfolio, Five Verbs Shape Your Team's Legacy. And he's currently working on another book called Elegant Leadership, Distinguishing the Good, the Bad, and the False, which will come out in 2027. So without further ado, I want to bring our special guest, Robert, to talk with us. Welcome, Robert. Thank you
Hi
for
there,
being
Shirley.
here.
I'm delighted to be invited. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Relaxing weekend, productive weekend. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid in London.
Awesome. That's good for you. I would take the weekend, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here. And so we're excited to talk about this topic today.
Absolutely. I don't know if our connection is stable. My PC just hiccuped, so fingers crossed we're going to
Yeah.
be okay.
Hopefully. Yeah. I think we should be fine. If we get any sticks, we'll just recuperate hopefully and I'll let
Yeah,
you know. Or if I stick, let me know, but we'll
yeah,
try our best.
yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Where do you want to start?
Well, when you and I got acquainted in February, the conversation weaved in a few different places. You pointed me to some of your recent episodes, and I was taking notes about where were the conversations that you're having with your community where I was equally enthusiastic. So we talked about culture. Your
Mhm.
episodes were talking about culture, BA certifications, and the job market. And what stuck out for me was how passionate you seemed to be about the job market and how difficult the job market was. And
Yes.
so I think that that's where you and I landed about what makes sense about a poor job market and what does not make sense, and what can BAs do differently, or how can BAs approach interviews differently to give them an advantage that maybe even the interviewer hasn't even thought of. And I think that's where we landed on
Yep.
this concept of debt.
Yep.
And it's not just tech debt, right? So maybe that's a good place for us to start is what kinds of debt do organizations, teams, BA leaders, what kinds of debt do they perceive?
Yeah. And I think it's important to even give a backstory to that. I think a lot of people that I've talked to, certainly within this year and last year, has been feeling very frustrated with the job market. They just feel like they're applying. Some people are getting calls, some people are not getting not even one call. And even when they do go into the interview, they do their best and then they get ghosted. So there's a lot of frustration in the marketplace, and they're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I saying the wrong things? Are there no more jobs? Has AI replaced us? So there's so much panic in the job market because prices are going up. People have expenses. They want to get a job so they can be able to take care of their families. And they're like, what should I be saying? What is the outcome that I'm not, what am I doing wrong that I'm not getting the job? And it's important when we talk that I never thought about this before, about the concept of why are the interviewers actually hiring you? There's a debt they're looking to pay. I never looked at it that way. So when you mentioned that to me, I was like, wow, that's so insightful, being able to just think not just in tech debt. And if everybody was here who may not know, for us, tech debt is when you build something and you take some shortcuts and you're like, I'll get back to it later. So now you have this debt. It's not built the best way. And you as an engineer probably know more about this than I do, but it's not built in the best way. So if we keep having more of that, we're going to not have a good solution, right? So we have to come back and fix it later and pay back that debt. But there are other debts, right, that the company may have that they're looking for a BA to solve. Just never thought about it that way.
Yeah. So the job market and the repeated disappointments that candidates have, one point of clarity that I think is really worthwhile is that there is a wealth of valuable and profitable innovation work to be done. There's a backlog, and that's a kind of innovation debt that almost every company has. That's my
Mhm.
point of view. Yet the job market is not in a great place. that disconnect should be unacceptable to all of us.
Mhm.
Yet it is the reality, right? We cannot deny that there's this huge backlog, there's this huge innovation debt, yet the job market can't support it. This is not a sampling error. This is not as if candidates are making mistakes or candidates aren't a great fit, or oh, I as the follower of this job market, I just don't believe that these are sampling problems. These are not one-offs. There are systemic and there are systematic problems. And Carolisa, if you'll remember last week, while we were talking, I also stumbled upon a newsletter from an HR organization
Mhm.
where the subject line said, the hiring process is broken. All right. So that screams that we have systemic and systematic problems in the job market and in the hiring processes. So I think that's an important point to make for your whole audience and your community and especially BAs, that they are fighting a system that is setting you up to fail. That's
Yep.
a very provocative point of view, but I feel I can defend it. And I would argue that what I just said isn't actually that provocative.
Yeah,
And
because we have this innovation that you know that there are things that we still need to build and create, and then we still don't have enough people to fill that, and yet the job market is so bad. How does that happen? Like, how do we get out of
yeah.
that? How do we move
So
past both the interviewer and the interviewees? You know?
so I think a very local, palpable, and tangible culture trait of most organizations at the moment is that we are in what I'll call a communication traffic jam.
Hmm.
Most of us have back to back to back to back to back to back to back meetings.
Yeah.
We'll hear words like, well, I can't get to my real work until after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, then what is that real work? Is it just more email? So we are drowning in this infinite activity. It is a tsunami of meetings. It is a tsunami of emails. Um, this is what I call the communication traffic jam. And what I believe, consciously or subconsciously, executives they look at these traffic jams that they themselves have either created or are unable or unwilling or unincentivized to fix. And these executives say, well, everyone's complaining about having too much work to do, and there's fatigue, and there's burnout, and there's saturation. Why would I ever put more cars on the road? Cars meaning moving pieces, meaning moving projects or additional resources, supply and demand. We could talk about the supply and demand of innovation work being uh, what's the word, irrationally depressed right now. And so executives in these traffic jams have every justification to say, why would I hire more? So I believe that executives, as they perceive these traffic jams, underinvest, under innovate, and under hire. And this depresses the job market, moving the supply and the demand curve. If you can imagine a slide with me here, it moves the supply and demand curve to the left, reducing the quantity of innovation that's actually happening. Now, there's this cliche out there that says, well, the pace of change has never been slower. And I would argue, well, first of all, I can personally count 15 different interpretations for this irresponsibly ambiguous cliche of the pace of change has never been faster. Does that mean more projects are starting? Does it mean more projects are finishing? Does it mean more are in flight? I mean, it is an unhelpful, ambiguous phrase. The pace of change is increasing. But to try to hit my pause button here, I believe that the job market, we can explain the poor job market because all of us are caught in these traffic jams, that organizations are either unable, unwilling, unskilled, but we are somehow tethered to this addiction and this comfort zone of meeting gridlock. Not scalable, not fun, infinite activity, setting everyone up for failure. And this is something we must fix long term. And so, Carolise, in this conversation, we can talk either about the long term uh, cost profile of this unscalable meetings, of these unscalable meetings, or we can talk about, okay, given the bigger picture problems, what is a BA going to do tomorrow, short term, to fight through the traffic jam to land a job?
Yeah.
Um, so, any reactions
Yeah,
to that?
I definitely want to get to that last part. Like, what can they do, like short term? But I do want to go back to where you talk about, why executive looking at this traffic jam, all these meetings, things moving slower. Why would I add more people? And there was a famous or a common saying I've heard project managers in particular say that if the project is going badly and moving slowly, you can't just throw more people at it. It doesn't go faster because you throw more people at it, right?
Right.
That's
You don't
been
fix a
kind of the
traffic jam
mindset.
by simply adding 10 cars.
Yeah, right, right. So if we can't do that, but we have to solve this job market. We have to find a way to help BAs to break through to be able to land jobs because it's definitely a big pain point. So what are the short-term things that you alluded to earlier that they could do to move through this traffic jam?
So every interview that you have is a local, I'm going to call it a sales pitch.
Mhm.
When a BA goes into an interview, it is effectively sales where I as the candidate am transferring my confidence to help the organization. I am transferring that confidence to the candidate. If I succeed, to the interviewer. If
Mhm.
I'm successful, the interviewer is going to pass me along in the interview process, of course, ultimately, hopefully, to get the job offer. So I believe that a BA can distinguish themselves when they convey to the interviewer, I grasp what is typically happening in teamwork cultures where there's meeting gridlock, there are communication traffic jams. No team is saying to the candidate, can you help me with my meeting debt? We need more meetings. Can you help me with my meeting minutes? We
Right.
need more meeting minutes. Or
Yeah.
I need another person to help me have AI generated meeting transcripts. So these are not the communication channels that help companies get out of debt. It is structured documentation. Now, over the last 20 years, structured documentation has fallen out of favor. Like a lot of forms of discipline in the human life, right? We can grumble and groan at all forms of discipline. Why is creating documentation so unpopular? High upfront cost, like to draft a process flow, a project charter, your GUI design, your training materials. We can groan and grumble and roll our eyes at documentation. We can say, oh, it's administrative, blah, blah, blah. However, why do we do it? Even meeting minutes, we have this vague notion, you know what, if I write this stuff down, it means it's going to be more valuable later. Valuable as in it's going to be lower marginal cost to remember, retrieve, onboard, share information, and change our mind. So, but meeting minutes are like the most lazy attempt possible. It is such a CYA, and I would like us to maybe have a little bit higher expectations than.
That's the reason we do it, by the way. It's a CYA. We're like, if we don't write it down, somebody
Yeah.
says something, I can
Well,
show you we
then
said this.
if you're proud of that, put that on your LinkedIn profile to say, I'm an expert in meeting
Yeah.
minutes. And I know you're going to hire me because I'm a big chump. And I'm the one you can finger point and say, hey, Robert, take notes. Like this, it, we should understand that if you're not putting meeting minutes, action items on your LinkedIn profile, like that's a skill. Why are you trying to do that stuff every day? We need to raise the rigor and the discipline and yes, the formality of our documentation. Why? Because documentation is the communication channel that gets us out of these communication traffic jams. All this formal documentation, it minimizes the marginal cost to share information, to collaborate, and to change our mind. Low marginal cost, it's all of business. Any business that wants to be profitable, that wants to scale, right? A project charter, process flows, these documents help us scale expectations,
Mhm.
decisions, etc. When we have communication infrastructure, now we can convert these traffic jams into symphonies. Low marginal cost. This is not like Econ 450. This is Econ 101.
101 from the
Low
beginning.
margin, low marginal cost. It's not free.
Yeah.
It's not free. It's high upfront cost. No one should be shocked or turn their nose up at infrastructure, because if you want your team to scale, your operations to scale, and really what we're talking about here, BAs are already plenty experts in reducing marginal cost of an organization's ops. That's not at issue. But day to day, week to week, BAs as part of a team, what you are effectively doing by reducing, I'll call it methodology debt, and day to day, you feel like you're reducing a team's documentation debt. That is what solves our communication traffic jams, because we are building communication infrastructure. We've reduced the marginal cost to change our damn minds.
So that's interesting. By the way, guys, if you have any questions on what Robert is saying, you can put it in the chat. We're going to get to the chat eventually. So go ahead. If you have questions, put it in there. We're going to get to that. So it's interesting because this documentation debt or methodology debt, it's almost invisible, right? It's almost not talked about the way you do for like a tech debt. But this is a very constant thing that we as BAs are always dealing with. But nobody ever really talks about it. It's just kind of an invisible thing that you're burdening us, but nobody has time to even look and to think about it in this way. Methodology debt and communication traffic jam. Yes.
I agree. I think that one reason why this goes back to over the past 20 years, structured documentation has fallen out of favor. The Agile Manifesto told us that the primary measure of productivity is working software.
That's right.
That's in a phase that's called build.
Mm-hmm.
How many things, how many agreements, how many decisions do you think a team needs to make or should make upstream from build that information, it's worth putting on paper? It's a lot, but it has fallen out of favor. People are shrugging. They either don't want the discipline for whatever reason. There are so many decisions, so much information that teams are sharing that they're effectively shrugging about the formality of documenting that information. I think that's a travesty. That undermines communication infrastructure. It raises marginal costs, because now we've got to have that third, fourth, fifth meeting. I got to dig into 100 emails deep to find that what was the last email volley about that decision. This is what I call infinite activity. And this is why I believe BAs have lost a grasp of what are those upstream, what's the upstream work from code? Because we're making technology the master. We're allowing tech to lead the business.
So in a way, we could be swinging the pendulum, right? Because pre-manifesto, I would just call everything that happened before that pre-manifesto, right? We were so focused on documentation that we weren't even outputting anything useful. The software was behind.
So I think that there are various definitions of waterfall versus agile. What you just proposed was that waterfall was high documentation, agile is low documentation. I think some agilists would dispute that and say, no, we're not about less documentation. We're about the right, there's different interpretations because it's just all squishy. But we could also
hybrid now. Actually, they're blending it now and just calling it hybrid because we do some documentation and some agile.
So waterfall and agile, we could talk about scope size, large or small. We could talk about documentation, high or low. We could talk about frequency of go live events.
Yeah.
High frequency, low frequency. Or we could talk predictive versus adaptive. And well, is there such thing as gone too far with adaptive, as in nailing Jello to the ball? Of course, there's a such thing as a blob of expectations, right? So it is the wrong battle. It is the wrong hybrid. We have a natural hybrid in the cost profiles. Let's take an operations example before we go back into an innovation context. If a company has re-engineered processes, a customer experience, to make it less expensive or a better customer experience, I'm gonna call this. Um, it's been innovated, and I'm going to call. Let's use a cost as an example.
Mhm.
It's lower marginal cost for the customer to engage with us. What we do is faster, cheaper, easier for the customer.
Yeah.
Whatever the company has not re-engineered yet might still be high marginal cost. We could, let's take a bridge as an example. Trying to think of, since I know what part of the United States you're in. I'm trying to think of, well, let's take the Tennessee River.
Okay.
Without a bridge across the Tennessee River, it's high marginal cost to get a bunch of cars, a bunch of people from one side to the other.
Mhm.
Once we build a bridge, now we have reduced the marginal cost to cross the river.
Yep.
And at some point, the high traffic may justify a second bridge, a third bridge. And yet this is all infrastructure.
Mhm.
So we have that natural hybrid of low upfront cost, we just haven't innovated it yet, or low marginal cost. Well, it's the same thing in innovation work. If we have written the project charter, if we've drafted the process flows, if we've written the code, what we are doing is reducing marginal cost. And anything we haven't written down is low upfront cost. So we have this natural hybrid in terms of money, in terms of cost profile. Not only is it natural, it's unavoidable.
Mhm.
So we don't need another contorted, contrived hybrid where waterfall and agile are bickering, saying, "Oh, it's this level of documentation. Oh, it's this frequency. Oh, it's this scope." Like that, those hybrids ignore cost. So both are financially irresponsible when you're just, again, those 17 programmers back in 2001, I understand what they were trying to do. They were frustrated with what the web was in the mid late 90s with these go live events that were really far apart.
Yep.
Totally understandable why 25 years ago they wanted to react, and arguably they overreacted. But it is 25 years later, and the web is a little bit different place than what those 17 programmers perceived in 2001. So I would submit to your community that you have an unavoidable natural hybrid, and it's called a combination of low upfront cost, as in you're not going to document that stuff, or it's low marginal cost, which means your work is worth documenting, meaning your work it's worth scaling. And I hope BAs, as you go into these interviews, you should be conveying to your interview, my work is worth scaling. My job isn't just documentation, but you know what? 100% of my work, it's worth putting on paper because now we've reduced the marginal cost to collaborate, to share, to involve the 39th stakeholder. Oh, we forgot Judy in accounting. And we reduced the marginal cost to change our mind, which includes the next project. So the right documentation, governed in the right way, is nothing short of a love letter to your future team. Your future team thanks you for your diligent documentation. And if you want to set up your next team if you want to set them up for failure, don't document anything, right? And again, this is BA 101. We just have to keep reminding ourselves, your work, your work is worth scaling. It's worth putting on paper, and it helps you in the interview process because what you are consciously or subconsciously, explicitly or implicitly conveying to your interviewer, I know what kind of debt you have. You have methodology debt because you're in traffic jams. You have innovation debt because you've got a huge backlog that sometimes just gets purged. And you've got documentation debt. I will help you pay back your debt on your terms as you, the interviewer, see it.
So we've talked about technology debt, tech debt, documentation debt. We've touched on methodology debt, innovation debt. We've just talked about upfront costs and marginal costs. If we can give a practical example, like you just gave one, which was a good one, just not Robert, but like, how can we really drive home to BAs who are watching this, who are in the job market? Like, how do I bring this about in the conversation to really position myself as the person that's going to come in? Like you said earlier, the interviewers themselves don't even know that this is what they're trying to solve for. Right?
Yeah.
So how do they bring this about so that they can come out to be the best candidate and really get the job?
Here's one way. I'm going to put it in terms of a fun cliche. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Right now. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about documentation debt. The best time for an organization to document current state was long enough ago when it was still future state.
Mm-hmm.
So the second best time to get current state on paper, like
Yeah.
planting a tree, it's today. So say any organization that is willing to raise their hand and say, you know what, we shrug, and plenty of companies do this. We shrug at current state documentation. That is saying the same thing as we shrug at future state documentation, meaning what you are putting on paper is disposable. Saying, you know what, these meeting minutes, I don't know if we're going to look at it. We're going to let someone off the hook who's double and triple booked. Again, tolerating low discipline. We're going to let someone off the hook not attend this meeting. We're going to write notes for them like the chumps we are so that so they can be informed. But then these meeting minutes, how long do they hold their value?
Not
Not
very.
long.
No.
Not long. Why do we hold such a low bar for ourselves that we're willing to invest time and ask valuable employees to spend time on depreciating work? That doesn't feel good. So I do believe there is a ton of value. There's a ton of humility in documenting current state. Why is it valuable? Because I love the phrase from a book called The Four Disciplines of Execution. The author is Chris McChesney. His quote is, execution's two best friends. Again, execution's two best friends are simplicity and transparency. If I have my current state process, let's say it's 100 boxes across X number of process flows. Once I have that on paper and we're sufficiently aligned about where the bodies are buried and where the dysfunction is, now I have the calm, the confidence, and we can have the pragmatic disagreements and collaboration about, well, what does smart bundling look like to improve these 100, process boxes, X at a time, to keep our project size modest, to have some momentum in success. So that's one place I would start, is that I believe it is rampant that companies shrug at current state documentation, which it's almost synonymous with saying we shrug at future state documentation. Yes, it's on the surface unglamorous, but you know what the glamorous part of current state documentation is you're showing courage that you can confront where the biggest dysfunctions are. And there's a huge likelihood that as you are documenting current state processes, you are working closer and closer to the customer, which is also what I would call upstream. I've been in countless conversations with BAs over the last 10 years about the desire to be more strategic, the desire to work upstream, away from the go live event, upstream from test, upstream from build, even upstream from design, upstream from requirements, upstream from the project start, also known as cross-project work. Well, the origin of cross-project work is there's a customer need. And the customer need is in the form of, well, something's unacceptable about the customer experience. So getting that on paper can be incredibly valuable for any organization, because let's acknowledge that incumbent employees find documenting their dirty laundry to be really unattractive. A new employee can come in and document the dirty laundry. It is incredibly powerful, and we shouldn't be surprised that confronting the most awkward pieces of our organization, we shouldn't be surprised how awkward that is. But I believe that is a very tangible place. If I were to scale my company from my employee size of one, if I scaled to 5 or 10 people right now, it would absolutely be going out to help companies reduce their documentation debt and saying, if you also see value in documenting your current state processes, we will do that. I think it's a grossly underrated work. I think it's very valuable.
Yeah. So I guess in the interviews, some parts of the interview, the interviewers will tell you, what they're looking for in the candidate and what are the problems they're having. And it's for us, if you're as a BA, if you're in the interview, to listen out for that and kind of interpret that to be, hey, that's that's an example of documentation that they have. I could insert myself here to show how I could help reduce their marginal costs and how I could be very valuable to them in doing useful, meaningful work, not just regular documentation, just getting their current state, helping them to move smoothly through and understand what they're actually doing right now so that they can actually scale. So that could be one way that we can reuse that in a practical sense in the interview, right? Would you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, cool. All right. So, man, we covered so much good stuff. um, we did also talk a little bit about high friction in the job market, right? And the matchmaker or playing matchmaker. Is there anything there that, from the interviewer perspective, that could help to reduce the imbalance that we have when we have all this innovation that out there, but still the job market is as bad as it is? Is there any perspective that the interviewers should have in terms of how they look at candidates? What do you think?
Um, so I think in terms of metaphors, and another fun cliche is when you're good with a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
I'm good with music, so I see teamwork as a symphony. So you're asking about the interviewer, right?
Mhm.
I hope that the interviewer likes, is attracted to the concept, the visual, and the culture of momentum, pacing, not herding cats, not a mad dash, not franticness, but a steady drumbeat and rhythm of information flow, expectations, decisions, and agreements. Um, so that's where my mind goes, even that if that does feel conceptual or abstract. But it's easy for me to convert that abstract metaphor of an expectation factory, an expectation symphony, uh, into what I call finite productivity. So last week, Carolise, you and I, and we did touch upon earlier in this conversation, the difference between what I call finite productivity and infinite activity.
Mhm.
So I believe too many teams are addicted and they're in this comfort zone of infinite activity, meetings, meeting minutes, racy, Jira tickets from hell. Uh,
I know about that. I have a few right now.
Jira tickets.
Yeah, from hell.
Um, I mean, imagine, on a lighthearted note, imagine stepping into an elevator and someone from the C-suite asking, "Hey, Carolise, how's that project going?" You said, "It's going great. We've finished 77 Jira tickets." Is that
Doesn't
good? Is that
doesn't
like
doesn't know doesn't have a context of what that
that?
means.
That is,
Sounds
or
like a big number, but what does it mean really?
exactly. There's no expectation of what does good look like.
Right.
So I believe that a mature team has a firm grasp of what is its finite productivity. Uh, we know exactly what decisions. Now it can change. Just because when I said the word exactly, I mean precision. I do not mean rigidity. Uh, so I'll throw out a number, and I don't think we'll have time in this chat to go into uh, the, the 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 detail of my number for finite productivity, but my number is 216, and that number is 54 times 4. So my default position going into any team, any client, any organization is that I expect for any successful innovation ensemble, we are going to need to execute these 216 steps. Every lessons learned that we complete is going to likely tweak that 216, say, you know what, we're going to partition that work into separate bundles. So now the 216 becomes 220. And maybe we couple a couple things. So the 216 drops to 212 or 208. And again, another time I could explain why is it a multiple of 4. But when you go into the elevator and someone asks, how is that project going? It's a different conversation when you say, of our finite productivity of 216, we are exactly 50% done. We have completed 108. So I'm reminded of a powerful coaching, powerful request I got from a dance coach of mine, and she would tell our team, "Don't don't just rehearse until you get it right. Rehearse until it's really quite difficult to get it wrong."
Mm.
That is a powerful culture aspiration for our teams. If we are willing to strive for this maturity, to grasp what is our finite productivity? First of all, do you like the concept? Because if you don't, or if your executives shrug at this notion of finite productivity, then you have no problems. You should stay wallowing. You should stay wallowing in infinite activity because because nothing will change until your status quo is more painful than the transition. And if your status quo of infinite activity just isn't that painful, stay there. But if you decide that this quicksand of infinite activity is sufficiently painful, imagine and then pursue what would finite productivity look like. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a lot,
And
but it's finite and it's changeable.
yeah, Rob, this is very deep, very detailed, and it's so captivating and right because the concept that you mentioned of infinite activity, and I love the term, by the way. I'm going to be using it forever now. It's all infinite activity. The point is that we are involved in all of these activity in the project, and we feel like we're being productive. But a lot of time it's just noise. We're just running around being busy bees, just running around doing stuff. And at the end of the day, you're exhausted and you're like, but I did all this stuff, but I have nothing to really quantify that this was something I was useful that I produced. So we're all in, like me, I work on two different projects. So I'm a consultant with my consulting company, and then I'm consulting to a client. So I have two different laptops, and I have Slack with one team, and then I have Teams with another one, and then this one is sending emails and this meeting. And so I'm always juggling two organizations at the same time. And I get things done, but I'm like, oh, wow, there could be ways to make it much more streamlined, right? So we don't always recognize that the activities that we're doing is really could be categorized as infinite activity. The finite productivity, though, which is a great way to context like that elevator pitch where you can give the CEO, this is how much percentage we've finished of all what we have left. That's a better answer than just giving a random number or a number that doesn't have any context to it. But the only thing I would say is it reminds me a little bit of definition of done, even though it might not be exactly the same thing. So I don't want to get into too much agile methodology, but just quickly, what is the difference between the finite productivity you mentioned and definition of done?
Well, they might be synonymous.
Yeah.
Just the definition of done, it has zero detail, right? That word choice doesn't have any detail. And I'm willing to interpret that label, finite productivity, very literally, welcoming someone to say, hey, Robert, as soon as you say finite, I want to see the math. Yes,
Mhm.
that, and again, it's explicit without being rigid.
Mhm.
This is a critical, there's this accusation about documentation being rigid. No, explicit and rigid are not the same thing. The ink is always wet. Again, when stuff is documented, you're just reducing the marginal cost to change it because I don't have to go to 5 different people's heads to remember what did we agree to. So, where Carolise, as I was listening to you, um, if the 216 feels too detailed or too exacting to anyone, I would ask you to zoom out and consider this. If you are wallowing in infinite activity, this is a license for low expectations.
Mhm.
If you are willing to strive for finite productivity, it's high discipline, it's high empathy, it is a license for high expectations. That's why we are or should be well paid. When you settle for low expectations, when a team just shrugs at itself, then you cannot justify a wage, a job. And you know what? AI becomes a lot more compelling when humans have low expectations of each other.
That's correct.
I want humans, I want us to have high expectations of each other. I want us to be more compelling than AI. I call this CHI, collective human intelligence.
Hmm.
The improv world phrases it as none of us are as smart as all of us. I'm not smarter than AI, but if you give me a team of 10 people, my team of 10 people are going to be smarter than AI. That's how I beat AI in the marketplace, is because I'm going to assemble a decision symphony that is going to be more compelling, more fun, and more sustainable in more than one way than an AI agent.
Very interesting. Yeah, we could go down the AI rabbit hole, but I want to I want to bring it back because AI has been very hot in the BA space in the last couple of months. Everybody's kind of worried about how are we going to work with AI, and there's so many different ways that we do that with agents and other things. And I have a video coming out that will explain that. And I did a live on Thursday on that too. So if anybody want to check that out, you can do that. If you guys have any questions for me or for Robert, please put it in the chat. We're going to get to the questions in a few. Well, actually, we should get to the questions now because our time is running out. Okay, let me go through some of these questions. So we have a few people who have joined us from different parts of the world. New Brunswick, Ontario, Canada. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you guys were here for the beginning or at least got a good part of the conversation. So we have a question that says, I find the old methods of interviews don't support showcasing talent in many roles. You want to comment on that? Do you think that's true?
So there's an assertion here that the conventional, the old fashioned way of conducting interviews uh, doesn't set up the interviewee to show their best. Am I paraphrasing
Yep,
that?
that's it. Yep.
My immediate reaction is I've seen so much variability in an interviewer's skills that I'll agree with the question or the assertion. I think a skilled interviewee, as long as they don't make the interviewer uncomfortable, like completely upstaging or making the interviewer feel dumb, the interviewee should take enough control of the interview to demonstrate what they want to the interviewer
Yep.
to maximize the chance that they move on to the next round and get the offer.
Yeah. I
I
do agree with you
don't know
about
how
taking
I'm
control.
tracking. I don't know how I'm tracking to that though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you in that you have to take control a little bit and kind of guide the interviewer to where you want them to go sometimes. But it's kind of an odd question because old methods versus new methods, and I'm not sure what the new methods are. I have seen where there's a whole AI interviewing someone, and depends on what you answer, the AI will determine if you move on. I don't like that new method. I would rather the interviewer be an actual person. Today, you have to put your resume in, and AI scans it and determine if you even get to be called by the hiring manager. That's also a new method. Not sure if that's very fair to everybody's out there, but that's what we're in right now. So there are advantages and disadvantages of the old method and the new method, if I'm reading it correctly. But yes, in the interview, you are there to sell yourself. And like we talked about earlier, that there's a debt that they want to pay by hiring a BA, and they themselves may not know it, but you have to kind of help them to see how you're the best person to help them reduce their tech debt, their documentation debt, their innovation debt, all of the different things that we talked about. And if you can properly maneuver that, I know it's tough, and being so nervous anyway might make it harder for you to do that, but this is something you can practice, so that you can really give the best impression in the interview. All right, thank you for that question. Another person says BAs can help fix these broken recruitment processes. I think they can if they're working in the organization and they have impact on HR, but I'm not sure how else they can fix the recruitment process. Robert, do you have any thoughts on that?
If the culture is one of an expectation symphony, yes. And these broken recruitment processes, if you shrug at documenting the current state dysfunction, you make it more difficult to re-engineer the processes. So I'll go back to the helpful, applicable metaphors of the expectation symphony in your current state documentation. But again, if for an organization that is resistant to documenting current state, how how do you expect to improve your recruitment processes in a paced, manageable manner that has credibility. So you set yourself up for failure if you shrug at current state, recruitment processes, and dysfunction. But we could get into the software as a service, and there is a incongruence between software as a service that is very data centric and shrugs at process versus we're going to be religious about documenting processes. That's another valuable rabbit hole, but it is a rabbit hole about data doesn't pollute itself. So if you think you have a data governance problem, you are exactly wrong. You have a process governance problem. Data does not pollute itself. There's this vicious circle of poor data quality, which means we shrug at processes, which means we have shadow processes, which means we're going to have shadow data, and we're back right where we started.
And we make bad decisions because the data was wrong in the first place. So now we can't scale, and then we make go in the wrong direction. So I agree with you. Very, very, very good answer there. All right, we also have this is a long one. Let me see if I can get the gist of it. Okay, the debts are in terms of cutting out unprofitable workflows for the BAs, right? These debts are not necessarily dealing directly with the financial aspect of the organization, but these workflow does. So yeah, when we say debt, we're not talking about just money, right? Obviously, we're talking about all the different ways that the organization is in debt. It needs to have better culture. That could be culture debt also, better methodology, better innovation, and these are the gaps between where it should be and where it is right now. That's the kind of debt that we're talking about. Okay. We also have another follow-up to that. The debts are in terms of cutting out unprofitable workflows for the BAs. These debts are not necessarily dealing with it directly. Okay, I think it's the same question. Okay, somebody said symphony. I love the musical analogy. That's awesome. Yeah, I really like the way you put these terms together and the way they really mimic like art and symphony. I think it's a wonderful. It really brings up to mind the idea of everything working well in unison and of a beautiful, flow to them. So I really like that term. Yeah.
Just yesterday, I published. It was on LinkedIn. It was either an article or a post about the value of synchronization and the domino effect of either shrugging. I think the title is Shrugging at Synchronization versus the positive domino effect of when you unapologetically are addicted and obsessed with synchronization. If you shrug at synchronization, it means you're shrugging at someone waiting. You're shrugging at someone else's time, saying, oh, their time isn't valuable. You're ignoring something. So I gave a much more thoughtful, I have much more thoughtful statements to make about synchronization. And it's a very recent LinkedIn article, like in the past day or so. It is such a vital culture trait for relationships and progress. And synchronization, again, this is not music 455. This is music 101. We need to be fabulous at the fundamentals, to be brilliant at the basics.
Yep, I was putting in the chat the link to our page for this event where they can find your connection to LinkedIn. So if they want to go and follow you on LinkedIn, you can find the link there. I'm putting in the chat. If you want, you can go to carolise.com, go to Global BA Stand-Up, and you'll see a write-up with Robert on there. You can follow his LinkedIn and you can get an option to see that article he referenced just now. So yes, very good. Okay.
Carolise, there, I see something in the chat.
Yeah.
Where I think it's Alicia, my friend Alicia, is asking about this quote. And I wish I could attribute this quote because it's not mine. Nothing will change until your status quo or the status quo is more painful than the transition. I'll let everyone just reflect on that. Does that apply to you? And if your status quo isn't terrible, then maybe don't change. But I think for a lot of us, whether it's individually, in a toxic environment, in if you're working in a quote frustration factory, or if your team has high frustration, at some point, as executives demand more for less, putting you in tighter and tighter traffic jams, at some point, I believe your status quo is going to be sufficiently painful that you're going to say, you know what, changing culture, imitating a decision symphony doesn't sound half bad.
Yeah, it's
I
a
hope
wonderful
you get
quote,
there,
actually.
I hope
Yeah,
you get there sooner rather than later.
yes, that's a very, very wonderful quote. So I'm happy you were able to clarify that. All right, so we also have I can't pronounce your name, but he says, I often prefer to use PowerPoint presentations during interviews. How efficient is that in ensuring that one takes charge of interviews and really show what you can do? Well, I wouldn't start off with a PowerPoint. Like if I go to an interview, I'd really let the interviewer lead. If they ask for a presentation and I show up with one, but I wouldn't, because there's a lot to do with a PowerPoint presentation, right? They have to look at it. You have to make sure you bullet point the thoughts that you want clearly, and then they're looking at the PowerPoint, not at you. So I'd rather you be able to discuss and speak clearly and have a dialogue. Like me and Robert is having right here. Have a dialogue, and if they want you to come back and present something, then you come with a PowerPoint presentation. But it wouldn't be my first go-to because it will kind of distract from you a little bit and kind of focuses on the type of presentation, especially if the presentation deck is very, creative and beautiful. It might just distract more than help you. So yeah, the PowerPoint would be only if asked. Only if asked. You want to showcase your own analytical skills, and that should be how you handle that. Every sprint should have a finite expectation, sprint goal. The definition of done confirms that we have our finite activity for the sprint done. That's how I see it. Wow. I mean, let me start and then I'm going to let Robert kind of clean it up. So, and give me his thoughts. But I think it's kind of two different things, right? So, yes, there's finite productive from what I understand from what Robert explained. And there's definition of done. Definition of done feels more like a checklist. Here are all the things that we need to do to know that this increment is done. But my impression of what Robert explained is more this is these are all the finite things that is helping us to be productive. It has more context to it. You can understand more if the work you're doing is actually leading to this productivity goal, as opposed to here are this checklist of things and check, 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 check. But it doesn't really help you to make sure that it is productive. You have an increment, but it doesn't mean that this is the thing that you should. It doesn't have it's just the right thing to do kind of stuff. That is my impression. And I may be getting it wrong, but I'll let Robert explain in much more detail. You're the expert on this one.
Well, I'll just react to a couple of things I see in the message. When I see the word sprint, I know that the team is not cost oriented. If I see the word sprint, the team is shrugging at cost. Do you know what
Really?
it's focused on? Frequency.
The delivery date, like are we at the end of the sprint or not? This is the
It's
date when
it,
we.
and are they concerned about a working team? No, they're concerned about working software.
Yes, that is correct.
So the bigger picture of our conversation today, Carolise, was about interviewing and interview tips. This comment, it just tells me this is the context is agile. It's about frequency and
Yeah,
it's about software.
yeah.
It's not about a working team. It's not about ensemble. It's not about debt. There might be a backlog, but when I hear sprint, I hear frequency and I hear tech is driving the business. So I'm hearing the status quo of agile isn't that painful. So the person who's posted this, uh, my interpretation is they're not interested in changing to a cost-based team to minimize marginal cost. And that's okay, because that team is evidently not frustrated. So they should stay the course and do sprints. But
I
that
never
is a that
thought
is
of
a
it that way.
what?
But it's actually really true when you think about sprints. You're almost in a time lock. Like this is how long the sprint is. It's at the end of
That's
the
right.
sprint.
It's
We're
so right.
starting
So
next
it's not
sprint.
finite activity, it's finite duration.
Yeah,
Right. I think um there's a few incongruences in this comment. So
it's a different
uh
conversation, huh?
well it again, sprint means you're focused on frequency. Uh not activity, because I can still work a 100-hour work week within a sprint. That's my activity, is my labor, my laboriousness. If it's finite, well, then you're saying, Robert, whatever you do, just don't work more than 40 hours a week. Okay, then that's finite activity, but then that shrugs at productivity. Again, so there's a lot of variables here. When I hear sprint, it's about frequency of go live events. When I hear activity, it shrugs at productivity. And finite just says, just bill 40 hours. Everything else is a question mark.
I never thought about it that way, but it's actually very true. It is true that we are focused on frequency when we think about
the word in the Agile Manifesto. It's not about speed. The Agile community has claimed speed over the last 20 years. The word used in the Agile Manifesto is frequency. I had a rather interesting debate with someone, Kansas City, about 2 years ago. Someone in my audience said, Robert, speed and frequency are the same thing. And I said, you know what? I explained, well, I can visit from Chicago to Kansas City once a week, once a month, once a year. That's my frequency.
That's frequency, yeah.
But if I stay 1 hour, if I stay one day, and she still pushed back. She's like, no, speed and frequency are the same thing. And I finally said to her, I've had a policeman give me a speeding ticket. I've never had a policeman give me a frequency ticket.
And in the Agile teams, we talk about velocity, as in how much work can we get done in a particular sprint, just to show you that it's different from frequency. It's different.
Yeah, so Agile. Yeah, can I zoom out on Agile? Agile and hybrid.
Yeah.
These forces in the BA job market, in the BA careers, where has it led us? Fatigue, saturation, burnout, dysfunction. The process is broken. So nothing should be sacred, right? All of these forces are contributing to 2026 and where we are with the health or the lack of health of teams, the health or the lack of health of the job market. All right. So I don't believe anything should be sacred. Agile is not congruent with the symphony. Agile was inspired by waterfalls go live events that were really far apart, 9, 12, 18 months. Totally understandable why those programmers reacted and overreacted 25 years ago. It's a different world, but you have to decide, do you want to shape a culture based on frequency? Frequency is not true.
This is hitting home to me, like really, it's because I've always struggled with, why is it that in our regular way of working, we're not necessarily agile, but when it comes to development, we're agile. We're like super agile in development, because it was kind of came out of development.
It is a contrived hybrid. We're contorting ourselves.
Yes.
If it's not natural, why are you doing it? We have positive role models, such as a symphony. What would a symphony do? What would a dance couple do? In the interview, the question about would I pull out a PowerPoint in an interview? What would a dancer do? You would be who your dance partner needs you to be. The performing arts have so many incredible, collaborative, valuable, and fun culture traits. That's why there's so much value. And again, we're now in the teamwork instead of the interview. What would a symphony do? Your team should keep asking yourself, what would a symphony do? What would a dance couple do? If we're not on script, totally fine. We are off script. What would the art of improv teach us to do in playing yes and? Bring a brick, not a cathedral. I got your back, not watch your back. There are countless culture traits from the performing arts, what I call I presented earlier this month to the UK chapter of IIBA, and the session was called Imitating the Empathetic Arts. How many teams need more empathy? All of them.
All of them.
How many teams need more discipline? All of them. This is high expectations.
Yes.
And there are plenty of habits and frameworks out there, RACI being exhibit B, about lowering our expectations, fluff, infinite activity. Nothing should be sacred. If you are in a traffic jam, we need the courage, the language, the habits, The good news, it's not complicated, but uh, once BAs land the job, I hope once you get inside, you will find the language and the tools and the habits to not just have samples of success, but just like my dance coach taught, rehearse until it's hard to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When you are wallowing in infinite activity, you might succeed, but you are set up to fail. If you are willing to become addicted to finite productivity, you now have systematic success where my 216, I know if my team finishes the 216, we're going to succeed a lot because we're going to stop when we are unable to do those 216. We're just going to stop because it means we're shorthanded. We didn't imitate a symphony. We got a leader. We're not going to have a followership void. On and off the dance floor, I don't believe in followership problems. On and off the dance floor, big problem. They're always leadership problems because they persist. They get to keep their job when they screw up. So anyway, I'm on a soapbox, but
No, I like it. I like there's so many good gems in there. First of all, you said I got your back, not watch your back. I love that one.
that's
I got your
straight
back,
out of
not watch your
improv.
back.
Every board meeting at Second City in Chicago, when the board meets, when they're in person, they stand, they're, in chairs, they physically stand up and they turn, I don't know which, they turn one direction or the other, and they physically place their hand on the person's shoulder next to them. And they say the words at the beginning of the meeting, I got your back. That is the whole art of improv. Hashtag nobody fails. We are on an improv stage. Now, I don't know where the conversation is going to go 30 seconds from now, but you know what I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt? Everyone's going to succeed because we're going to play yes and wherever you want to go. I already know we're off script. It's not a crime. Being on script versus off script, we need skills for both. It's not a crime to be off script. You know what's a crime? Not knowing.
Not knowing you're off script. Yeah.
Not knowing whether, hey, like, are we imitating a symphony right now? Are we imitating theater? Are we on script because we know our finite productivity, or are we off script? It's not a crime to be off script. But then what would the art of this is why improv classes can be so valuable to salespeople, to BAs. You think quickly on your feet. It's a form of traceability, right? In our project work, traceability is a thing. You know what the improv world calls it? Yes, and. It's called yes, and. Because if you say yes, but, it means, well, you're shrugging to something upstream, meaning you are shrugging at traceability. So the notion of traceability and what the improv world teaches us as yes, and, they're congruent. They're the same thing.
Wow, this is really good. We have so many questions. I know we're over time. I'm going to get to some of them, but that was just really good gems. Thank you for sharing all of that, Robert. I think we're going to learn so much and take away so much from this session. It's going to be awesome. So there was a question here. So I don't know, I'm kind of scrolled out of some of the questions. There was a question about difficult to scale interviews these days. How can one balance answers such that interviewers won't feel incompetent? And one where interviewer said, I should take it easy with them.
That's hilarious. First of all, props to the interviewee for being the star in the room.
That should be a good sign that you know more than the person interviewing you.
Yeah.
I would just say that you can't dim your light necessarily just because you don't know who's who and what they know, right? So you're going to go in there, and if they feel like they're not following you, then you can, probably explain it a little bit more. But that should be a good sign that you know what you're talking about, and they they have to catch up. Just be humble, in my opinion. Be humble, be gracious, clarify. Make sure you spell out. Don't use too many acronyms and things that may confuse people. Spell it out, explain it. Assume that they may or may not know, and then explain what it is. And I would only add credence that you know what it is as well. And that's the only thing I could say about that. It's unfortunate that they're interviewing for a BA and are intimidated by the interviewer. So I've not heard that one in a while.
Can I add 2 comments again from the dance world?
Sure.
In an interview, on and off, on the dance floor, you want to be who your partner needs you to be in the short term. It's one song. It's 4 minutes. Leader or follower, just be who your partner needs you to be for the next song. I think that's worthy advice for an interview as
Mhm.
well. On the dance floor, there's some nervousness as beginners on the dance floor. And an instructor used to say to us in our beginner classes, if you're smiling, you're doing it right. I think that applies to interviews. If your interviewer is smiling and they see your insightfulness in the interview, you're doing it right. My mom has a quote: inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's quite hard. Every goal, almost like dating, what is the goal? To figure out whether you want to have the next date or to have the next interview, to have the next conversation. So back to this metaphor we used maybe at the beginning of this conversation, Carolise, and last week. It is a matchmaking process. And I hope BAs minimize beating themselves up because the job market is not a followership problem. There are plenty of voices who are telling you you need to do this and this and this differently. That's fine, but there are problems bigger than just the BA profession. There are problems bigger than the innovation arena, right? BAs adjacent roles, change managers having the same conversations, project managers are having the same conversations. I saw, just like last week, Carolise, when I saw that HR newsletter that said the hiring process is broken, I saw an HR newsletter this morning that said, stop treating HR like an admin function. Again, these are common problems around the professions. These are cultural, these are systemic, these are systematic. So in the short term, yes, let's win the job and figure out how to get that next date and move on in the interview process. And bigger picture, when we can catch our breath and work on the infrastructure. And I did see a comment. I'm not sure I can read the exact words from the comment, but someone is decoupling documentation from the work.
Mhm.
And I've had a boss say to me, Robert, you're creating more work. No, the infrastructure is the work.
Yeah.
Build the damn bridge. It is the work.
Then you
Because
can all get over it and be able
because
to have,
if you if you
okay.
decouple, if you well, documentation is quote fine like a lagging culture trait, and
Mhm.
you say, well, but the work is over here, then what communication channel are you talking about? Because you know what, whatever it is, it's disposable. Because if it's not worth documenting, first of all, you should tell your boss, my work isn't worth documenting. Documentation is just an afterthought. The future team, just the code, just an afterthought. The other communication channels, we're typing at each other. It's disposable. It's tribal knowledge. It's going to walk out the door. You
Mhm.
have to decide, do you want your work to be durable and represent infrastructure, or do you want it to be disposable and not scalable? So back to the comment and my former boss, when he said, Robert, you're creating more work. No and hell no. It is the work. It is the infrastructure. Infrastructure is scale. Scale is low marginal costs. Low marginal cost is profitability. Your work is worth scaling.
No, this is definitely good. Very good. And it's true. And we've just learned so much today. I know we're way over time. I'm gonna call it here, but there's so many more wonderful questions in the chat. I mean, people are happy about the distinction between frequency and speed. So somebody says frequency to equal to consistency, speed is equal on time, lagging first, fast, slow, etc., which is true. More questions about the agile methodology, and I think the whole clarification between agile sprint, which equals frequency, and what the finite productivity is. I think that people really appreciated that. All right, so I
Can I,
think,
can I, can I
yeah,
end with one more quote, please,
yes,
Carolise,
yes.
on the topic of speed? 3 years ago, I stumbled upon a quote from the automobile executive from the last century whose name is Lee Iacocca.
Hmm.
And Lee Iacocca's quote was, the speed of the boss is the speed of the team. And as an amateur musician, like, no, the synchronization skill of the boss. The synchronization skill of the boss is what dictates the speed of the team. Because as the boss, if I have no synchronization skill, you're waiting, idle workers, terrible job playing matchmaker between the supply and demand of work. So with all due respect to Lee Iacocca and all his accomplishments 50 years ago, I believe instead of treating speed as a leading culture, when we treat speed as a leading culture trait, we end up in traffic jams. Stop that. Treat speed as a lagging culture trait. What is the prerequisite? It is synchronization. You can ignore the laws of teamwork, but the laws of teamwork do not ignore you. Synchronization. What we're already casually using these terms. And this is in my LinkedIn post from last night. We're already using these casual terms for music. And all I'm asking, give me an inch and I'm going to take a mile. Let's become the symphony. Become the symphony.
Yeah, for sure. And the concept of pulling in these thoughts or the way that you guys work in the performing arts and applying it to our corporate lives and our projects, I think it's so beautiful, and it's refreshing, right? We're so used to just tech stuff, and it's all in the world of technology or
Franticness. It's all
project.
franticness.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't pay full price for that MBA. Oh, my leader. What's your leadership style? It's fast. We're speed. Clown, I hope you didn't pay full price for that MBA.
Yeah, it's interesting. And if you take performing arts, because everybody, you hardly have, even if you have a stand-up comedian, there's a team behind him. There are people who has to orchestrate how this show comes about. And what we're doing in our projects is really, it is a show. We have teams have to work together as partners. Like you mentioned, be who your partner needs you to be. That's a very powerful quote. And if we think about that as we're approaching our jobs, I think we'll all be much more successful. And if we have the right mindset, even from leadership, that is a symphony, I think that would really help in solving all of these debts that we talked about earlier, and not just the gap between hiring and the BAs that wants to get the job and trying to fill that innovation gap, but the tech debt gap, the culture debt, the methodology debt, all of these things can come together and be resolved if we have the right mindset. And we think of ourselves not as just individual pieces, just going to work and doing stuff and infinite activity all day long, emails and Slack messages, just responding. And at the end of the day, you're like tired and you're like, okay, I did all this stuff, but is it really productive? But focus on the finite productivity that you mentioned. I think that would be very, very helpful for us. Yeah.
A decision symphony, creating decision infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Your future team thanks you.
Yes. Well, this was great. I'm happy that you were able to join us today, Robert. I know that you mentioned your LinkedIn post, but if people want to reach out to you, if they want to get the books that you've published, I do have it linked on the carlease.com website, but is there any other place that they can, reach out to you, and any other programs or anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Next week, I'm talking to a similar organization called PML, Project Management Life. I'm speaking tomorrow in London in person. If anyone is in London, I'll be speaking at the Business Innovation Expo at Olympia on, the neighborhood is called Hammersmith. BA Life, it's an Edinburgh-based organization. So I'm speaking at BA Life on, I believe that's April 23rd, and that's going to be fun because we're going to role play those 5 verbs in the style of the Live Aid concert from 1985.
Wow.
But instead of synchronizing a concert of music, it's going to be a BA's finite productivity. So if you are intrigued by this concept of finite productivity and what it means to BAs, we're going to do that in the BA Life session on April 23rd. And I'm just one of probably 15 speakers at BA Life. That's probably enough for now.
Okay, great. All right, awesome. You're a very busy person. I can see that. So again, if you guys want to follow Robert on LinkedIn, I have his LinkedIn on carlease.com page that I shared earlier. And you can always find his books also available on the Amazon store. They're called Innovation Elegance, Transcending Agile with Ruthlessness and Grace. And the other book is Innovation Portfolio, 5 Verbs That Shape Your Team's Legacy. So those are great reads for you to go out there and get. So thank you everyone for joining us. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for putting your thanks in the chat and your comments in the chat. We have a wonderful conversation as we always do. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in our next live event on the 1st of April, April 1st, I think. Let me see if it's the 1st. The first Monday in April. I don't know if it's the 1st. But we'll be here again next month. So looking forward to everybody. Thank you so much all for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Take care, guys.